Hey, everybody. Our third leg of the stool couldn't join us today. It's Dr. Noah and Dr. Wanda Lee from Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. And this time of year, we get a lot of questions about a lot of health topics because everybody wants to make better choices for the new year, eating. But we thought that we would do exercise today. Some of the simple things you can do that don't require a lot of equipment, a small amount of commitment time, but that can have huge benefits in your life, in your health, in your wellness. Because let's face it, exercise is one of those extremely crucial things to live a long, healthy life. And Wanda Lee, you've talked a lot about this before. I think it's a whole course in one of our classes. And it's just how stationary we are. In fact, we talked about it in one of the last StreamYards we did too. So can you talk a little bit about why exercise is becoming even more important in our society today?
Absolutely. I mean, we've always known that exercise was important. This isn't like revolutionary news for anybody. And of course, for as long as I can remember, January at the gym and the yoga studio, it's packed. And then by, maybe next week, and certainly by the end of February, those numbers are trickling down. So, but in this day and age where natural life doesn't give us a lot of movement anymore for most people, we sit too much. We sit driving to work, we sit driving home, we often sit at work, we sit at home checking our social media streams or, being on our phone or doing something at home as well. So sitting is a huge issue and we need to balance that out. So here's some stats. I'm just going to look over here. Sitting for 7 to 8 hours a day is associated with a 50% increase in mortality from all causes. So it's just bad. It's just bad all around. And it's particularly bad for certain things like cardiovascular disease. So 147% increased risk. So right away, if you knew you could decrease your cardiovascular health risks by 147% by exercising instead of sitting for 7 or 8 hours a day, wouldn't you want to do that? So, that's part of it. Colon cancer, lung cancer, diabetes, everything they've studied is related in some way, shape, or form to too much sitting. The good news out of all that crappy news is that 1 hour of moving can negate 6 to 7 hours of sitting. So that's the formula that we're looking for. So if you're sitting for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, you got to think about keeping you moving for 1 to 2 hours a day. And that's going to be the target. So we're going to try to talk about some ways that you can do that without, having to go to the gym for 2 hours. Who's got time to do that every single day? So there's lots of other things that you can do.
You talked about just modern life causing us to sit more. And if we look at health in an ancestral model, our ancestors, they moved all day long. Whether men, women, children, didn't matter. It was across the board. They also squatted, they also sprinted, they also jumped, and they rested too, of course. So it's just ingrained innately in us to move. We are movement creatures. And we mentioned this, I think, in another StreamYard too, where, what's the baseline? How much should you be walking a day? And I'm a fan of 10,000 steps a day. I think you are too, or somewhere in that realm. There was a recent study coming out of an article that Dr. Joe Mercola wrote that 6,000 steps is necessary. I totally disagree with that. And the 6,000 came from a Korean or an Asian study saying that's all we need. And I totally disagree. That's absolutely not enough. I've seen stats recently that says that we can safely and we should be movement around 26 kilometers a day, or we can, and which relates in US 19 miles a day. So we can definitely move more. And what are some of your favorite tips to get those extra steps in, Wanda Lee?
Well, for most people, like if they're an office worker, let's say, let's try to build in some movement just into the course of your day. So park your car at the end of the parking lot where you have to walk to get into your office. Take the stairs. Put your garbage can, if you have paper in your office, on the far side of your office or outside your door where you have to get up and move to do that. I have one patient who uses a printer in a different section of the office so that she has to get up and go retrieve her documents from the printer to sit back down again. And so, little things like that, they seem insignificant, but when you add them up at the end of the day, you could get 1,000 steps in doing it that way. And it breaks up your sitting posture. So you move, your circulation is better. And when you sit down, your body is going to maybe be in a slightly different position. So it's less straining on the muscles, the joints, the spine, the arms, the whole bit. So a couple of things like that, really easy. A lot of people now have moved to sit-stand desks. And so breaking that up during the day, standing for a little bit, sitting for a little bit. One tip that seems to work well for a lot of clients with me is at the end of the day, put your desk up. So when you come in the morning, start standing.
Right.
And be standing as long as you can. If you can get to break time, if you can get to lunchtime, whatever you feel like, okay, it's time for a little break from standing, that's getting fatiguing, put your desk down. And then if it is before lunch, before you go for lunch, put it back up again. When you come back from lunch, stand for as long as you can again before you put it back down. And that brings me to the final thing I want to talk about for the office people. Get up off your desk at lunch and don't go sit somewhere else. Take even 15 minutes of your lunchtime and walk. It's just so much better to keep moving. Break up your day. And so those are my best kind of work ideas that I can give you.
Obviously there's some simple things that are really straightforward. If you have a dog, walk your dog. There's thousands and thousands of steps because trust me, your dog wants to walk with you. Our office situation is we have a flight of stairs between our offices and where we treat our patients. So I purposely walk up and down the stairs way more than I need. And fortunately, and some offices do have little gyms and treadmills. If I know I'm sitting too long, I can just walk down to where we see our therapy patients and I could use the treadmill. And I do that this time of year when I'm not outside as much. I find myself, I need at least 10 minutes on the treadmill a day to get those 10,000 steps. That kind of seems almost a prereq, but it really is that important. And lastly, and we talk about this, it seems like nearly every single live stream, highly recommend some sort of tracking device, whether it's an Apple Watch, whether it's a Samsung Watch, whether it's an Oura Ring, whether it's a Whoop strap, whether it's a Fitbit, because honestly, you'll have no idea how much you're walking or even sitting unless you use some form of technology.
And mine doesn't even look like that. Oh, can you see that?
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't.
This tracks my steps.
Cool.
And it can track my sleep if I were to bed, but I don't do that. But yeah, it totally doesn't have to look dorky. No offense, no.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wear it. God, the big one was gaudy and awkward, and this one is actually almost looks like a wedding ring. But absolutely right. So track it. Now, we talked a lot about sitting and then moving, but exercise in general, more vigorous exercise is really important too. I look at walking as the baseline for exercise. And I think the most important thing for exercise is, well, maybe not the most important thing, but the most important thing for you to continue to exercise on a regular basis is you need to do something that you enjoy. It could be if you're in a warmer climate, it could be literally gardening for an hour a day, every single day. It could be hiking 3, 4, 5 times a week. I have the things that I like to do, and Wanda Lee, I know you have certain things that you like to do. I know Dr. Mike exercises a different way. You're a woman, I'm a man. Dr. Mike has a totally different body size than me. I'm 6'4", 165 pounds, so I'm really tall and really thin. But the most important thing is find something that you can love, that you can do, and that you want to do, and that makes you feel well. So, Wanda Lee, what are the things that you like to do exercise-wise?
Well, we're trying to target moderate exercise. I'm not a intense athlete. I know there's lots of people who like to, hit that max sort of training level, but for moderate exercise, what we're looking at is you're warm. You may not be like boiling sweat, but you're warm, you've got your heart rate up and you're able to talk, but you're not so short of breath that you can't talk, but your heart rate is up and you're working it. So that's kind of my target, is looking at that moderate exercise. I do like to walk when I can, especially when the weather is better. But my single favorite thing to do is yoga. And the places that I go for yoga, because I get bored with the same routine all the time. So I like to mix that up with different people and different classes, but is something that is more than just stretching. I mean, I love the stretching component of yoga, but people think yoga, and if they haven't done yoga maybe on an involved level, sort of associated with lying down in savasana and sleeping for an hour, and yoga doesn't always look like that. In fact, some of them are quite vigorous classes. So that's my single favorite thing to do. Combine that with some Pilates based strength things, or some components that are strength building, and get your heart rate up, build your muscle mass, relax. This time of year, because I'm in Canada and it's snowy and cold and miserable, being in the hot yoga room for an hour feels a little like a mini vacation. So I think mental health is important too, and it does give me that as well. So that's my favorite.
Yeah, the way I look at exercise is threefold. One, I want to work on my cardiovascular fitness, which you can do walking, and I also run. And I've only really started running again since my son started running. I ran for 15 years of my life, competitive 5K, 10K, marathons, half marathons, and stopped for a 10-year period. Was always active, but didn't start running. So I've begun to run again, and it's been a great joy. I've been really thankful for my son, and I'm glad to run in. And I, like you, Wanda Lee, I agree, like chronic cardio, I personally am not a fan of chronic cardio. Getting out, running at an ultra slow pace and running every single day. Honestly, I do not think that is the best for your health. Now, you could run every day and do it properly, but do a little research on your own about chronic cardio. But running at a pace that your heart rate is essentially, like you said, where you can actually have some sort of conversation with a running partner, but have your heart rate up a decent amount, is probably the best target range you want to be in. And yes, there are ways you can calculate it, heart rate, but I think running at a conversational tone, 1 to 2, 8, 10, 4 miles a week, I think is a really, really great idea. So number one, cardiovascular, walking or running. Number two, mobility. Myself, like you, I'm a absolute yoga fanatic. 5 years into my yoga practice, I practice nearly every day at home in the morning, and I go to the studio 2 or 3 times a week. I couldn't even come close to touching my toes about 12 inches away. Now I could bend over and touch my toes, which is an enormous, enormous accomplishment for me. But yoga is not only for mobility, Wanda Lee, like you mentioned as well. There are some classes that are extremely, extremely muscle building and muscle stressing, and to create actually some really strong muscle activation. In fact, on our podcast, Beyond Your Wildest Genes, I've interviewed quite a bit of yoga instructors, and I think, Mike, or you have as well, with all different types of that. One of the yoga practitioners that I interviewed about a year ago, and that I'm interviewing again in another month, is Dean Pohlman, Pohlman, and he has a program called Man Flow Yoga. Now, it's not only for men, but it takes some of the spiritual side out of yoga and really focuses on building muscle with yoga. So if you're a guy out there and you think that you can't build muscle with yoga, or it's not for you, I would think again. For sure. And in Pilates is another thing, Wanda Lee, that you mentioned, that if you take a Pilates course, whether it's on the reformer or on the floor, that'll kick anybody's butt. That's how difficult it is. Amazingly challenging.
Lots of core stability.
Lots of core stability and challenging. And that's really, really important. The final thing, and this is important for everybody, maybe a little bit more important for men, or maybe it's just a vanity thing, but building some form of muscle mass or some sort of strength. And that could be going to the gym and using free weights or using machines. But what I wanted to share with you guys is something that I learned when Mike and I went through our primal coaching certification. There's 4 primal exercises that have baselines on it that they suggest most people should be able to meet. Not right off the bat, but over time during their exercise program and building up to it. And they're all body weight exercises. And here are the 4 things that I practice on not a daily basis, a few times a week, because that's one of the primal laws. One of the primal laws are lift heavy things. And your body can be a heavy thing. So the first exercise is squats. You should be able to do 50 air squats. Simple. I think most people can accomplish that. And there's modifications on this if you have any questions for me as well. The second thing is 50 push-ups. Now that's the hard one. That's something that I still challenge with. I could do 50 push-ups, but to do 50 push-ups straight is a little bit of a challenge for me. Still working on that. The third is pull-ups, 12 pull-ups. So I had a pull-up bar installed in my house. I could do that pretty easily. That took me a little bit of time to work up to, honestly. And the fourth thing is a 2-minute plank, which I'm sure you could do, Wanda Lee. And most people could do it, but a 2-minute plank is actually a pretty significant amount of time to hold a plank position. I think you would agree with that, Wanda Lee, as well. But those are the 4 primal movement exercises that I work on every single week to accomplish as my version of moving heavy things.
Well, and personally, as a chiropractor, we deal with this all the time, every day. But I tell people that functional movements are where it's at in terms of, excuse me, your spinal health and your flexibility and your day-to-day injury prevention, posture support, health and wellness. Move your own body. Going to the gym and lifting a weight like this is good. You'll build that bicep. But how often a day are you recruiting that muscle on that particular angle? What you are doing all day long is holding your body up. So any exercise that holds your body up is ideal. And then kind of the other flip side of that, when they research exercise, I think you already touched on it, Noah, do what you love. Do the thing you're going to stick to, do the thing you're going to want to do the thing you're going to do. And if you love swimming, that's number 1.
Yeah, and it's very just popped in my head when you said again, do what you love. The other thing, and we talked about it on the James Maskell interview about community, and it's the reason why yoga studios, CrossFit gyms, those other types of community type exercise are exploding all over the place, because you want to really succeed in exercise with a program that you could do and do it in a place that you love, something that you love, with people that you like to be around that can be supportive, and you will succeed every single time.
Absolutely.
Well, I have very little left to speak about exercise because I know everybody has a different take on it. But what we would love is that if you want to agree with us, if you want to disagree with us, if you want to share how you exercise, please let us know. Leave a message, leave a chat, whether it's in the regular comment section, whether it's in a private message. We'd love to talk to you and help you get on a more regular, daily, day in and day out exercise program.
Absolutely.
Well, be awesome and never unawesome.